Hi, welcome back to Mrs. Harrington's art class. Today we are going to be looking at the work from Alexander Calder. He was a famous artist from the early 1900s through mid, 1900s, and he really took a look at movement and symmetry of objects. And today we're going to be creating a stabile instead of a mobile that moves. He created these large steel structures. We're going to make a model of it, kind of, with what materials we have. Now, today you're going to need some simple materials. I'm going to have you look for a sheet of notebook paper. That usually is something, not a sheet of notebook paper, a sheet of printer paper. But if you don't, you can use notebook paper. If you are lucky enough to have some construction paper at home, you can use that. If any of you have any scrapbooking paper, that works really well too, the lovely pattern. This one I took two different kinds and I glued them back to back. But if you don't have that and you still wanted color, another thing you can do is add color before you cut to your half sheet of paper. So I'll walk you through those steps. So you have a lot of options, but my sample today is going to be walking you through this particular one. You're going to need a half a sheet of this printer paper, and I went ahead and prepared a half sheet for our purposes today. And you're going to take your printer paper and you're going to fold it in half like so. You want to make sure that it lines up nicely at the bottom. That way your sculpture will stand when you are completely finished. I'm going to have you turn it so that the fold is facing this side. And that way if you open it up like a book, it will open up nicely. When you pick that up, Alexander Calder really enjoyed these beautiful organic shapes that also tricked the eye into seeing movement within a stable or structure that was not moving. So to do that, we're going to just make a nice smooth edge. And so you should see that the top of yours would just be kind of curved a little bit, and the bottom still has that nice 90-degree angle. Now, one of the sculptures that he's famous for is a sculpture that appears to look as though it's a giant insect or arachnid. And so we're going to kind of get that same type of movement by the design we're making today. I'm going to have you, if you have your half sheet of paper, go ahead and measure out with your pencil, and you can use your finger to kind of get a general idea of where that would be. And you're going to do it very lightly. As you get better at it, you'll be able to tell where your line is. And I've put mine there just as a guide so that I don't accidentally cut too close to my fold right here. Okay. Now I'm going to make mine look like an insect, and it has 6 legs. Therefore, I'm going to design 3 legs, and then because this has a fold, it will be a symmetrical opposite. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to just give myself a simple line. I highly recommend using a very simple shape because you're going to be cutting along this line. So even though I do enjoy those zigzags, that means that you're going to have to take the time to cut each and every one of those. So I usually kind of add some points along the way, but not too drastic. And again, I don't want to go close to that fold. This is going to be our margin to do that. So I'm going to just give myself a nice smooth shape. And now you'll notice that I've got those 3 lines here, which will give me 1, 2, 3, 4 legs once I'm done cutting. Next, I'm going to ask that you pick up your entire thing, keeping that fold on your left. You're going to track with your scissors, and you're going to cut along those lines. Take your time because you want to make sure that you are cutting as accurately to your lines as possible. But then remember, we don't want to get close to that fold. So we're going to stop right along that margin right here that we have set for ourselves in the beginning. Now I'm going to do my next one. You're going to cut all of your lines. At any time, if you need to pause the video to cut yours, because I'm moving too quickly, by all means, please pause the video and then restart it once you are finished. I don't want you to feel rushed, especially at this part. Again, we're stopping at that margin right here. You'll see that I've stopped. I haven't gone any further. And because I drew 3 lines, I'm going to follow through with my final kind of arcing line here. And I'm going to also stop at that margin. And then we're actually done with our scissors for this at this point. And you'll see that I haven't gone any further. Once you get to that margin and you've cut all of your lines, remember this is your margin, this isn't one you need to cut. You may go ahead and you're going to open it up and lay it flat. Just be very careful, the paper is delicate. So I know I get excited about art projects and I rush too fast. And I accidentally, like I said, bump the camera or, rip my paper. So now you're going to notice I can see my lines. I'm going to start with this side here. And remember, symmetry is about doing one thing on one side that is the same on the other. We have this line of symmetry here. But what's going to differ from this point on is we're going to start folding our shape and folding our legs to support our structure. But we're not going to go beyond that margin that we set for ourselves as one of our first steps. Now that I have folded this one forward, that means that my next leg here needs to be folded backwards. So I can do that in 2 ways. I can lift it and fold this way, but I'm always afraid I'm going to rip my paper. So what I would do is just grab it and then fold your entire sculpture over and then fold it. And you can see there's my line, that margin line. Now this side went back, which means that this side's going to have to move forward. And so I'm going to flip my entire sculpture over and fold it back on itself. Now the trickiest one I've found for myself has been the last section here, because it feels like you want to fold the whole thing, but you're not. So this one here, as it's folded towards us, that means that this one's going to be folded back. We're going to fold right on that margin line and fold it up, keeping in mind that you want to line up your folds so that your legs are all in line. See how this one's off? We'll have to check that one to make sure it's folded all the way. I'm just going to adjust that one. There we go. And see how now they're all lined up beautifully? Alright, so now I'm going to make sure I get a nice crease in there. Just like if you do origami, you'll know about getting those real creases nice and crisp. And then we're going to open these back up and we're going to lay it flat again. But don't worry, it will hold the shape pretty well. If it gets too wiggly, don't worry about it. Now, you can kind of see the fold of my margin here showing through my fold. It's a very shadow in the video. Now this outside leg was folded in first. That means that the leg on the other side of that symmetry line needs to be folded backwards first. So we're going to be going this way. Again, being mindful that you are not folding part of the margin that you left for yourself. And now this one went backwards, which means that this one here is going to move forwards. And keeping that margin, don't lose it, because it'll make and we're going to flip it again. It'll make your sculpture fall over when you're trying to stand it up later. All right, here we go. And now I'm back to this last one. If you are afraid of, because now we don't have a margin line or any lines here, if you're afraid of doing that, just line it up with the bottom of your sculpture Again, creasing that nicely as if you're doing origami. And then if I lay it straight, it looks like it's kind of going all directions. Now, this is the tricky part, getting it to stand up. Now, if you're using printer paper, it does have a tendency to be a little bit wobbly, but it will still stand. And I don't know how I'm going to do this. Okay, I'm going to do this. And you're going to want to, and I like how you're looking down on it so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to just extend the legs out till it stands up. And then, but if you find yours is too wiggly, what you can do is you can actually make it a little bit more structurally sound. On this half sheet of printer paper, I added a layer of crayon. I had the red crayon going from left to right, and then the yellow crayon going from left to right. And then as I folded it, you can see that my shapes kind of stand out a little bit more. It's entirely up to you. And then I'm going to just adjust the camera so you can see. There we go. How I'm standing it up just a little bit. And I may have to play with the legs a little bit to get it to stand up. Oop, there you go. Not bad at all. It does stand. Now, when you're working on your own, like I said, if you do have access to other colors, when I stand this one up, you can see that it has different colors as it's standing. Let me move my white one over. Other students have colored theirs. I want to make sure my legs are standing up. There we go. And then you'll be able to see that it takes on these other shapes. And what's fun is to make a whole bunch of these in different sizes. I started experimenting before I began recording, and I started making some small ones. Now with the small ones, you might not be able to do 4 legs. 3 legs appears to be the max that I've been able to figure out without it falling over. And here is my interesting shape that I came up with. Again, taking a look at this, you've got to be really careful if you're cutting out those zigzags. They can really be tricky. But then you can get yourself a little insect army coming by. So I invite you to be creative and look at different types of colors, maybe even holding your paper horizontal rather than vertical when you're cutting. Try things out. You'll be surprised what you find. So thank you so much for joining us, and continue to be creative.